Good morning, everybody. Wherever you are on life's journey, you are welcome and wanted here at Community Church of Chesterland. I am Megan Carver. I am your moderator.
Good morning, everyone. We gather here today in the spirit of unity, honoring the rich diversity of paths that guide humanity. From different lands and languages, traditions and teachings, we come together with open hearts and minds. We honor the wisdom of every faith, the stories of each journey, and the sacredness of every soul. As we gather, let us remember that love, peace, and justice are woven through every tradition. Though our practices may differ, our shared humanity binds us, and our common values bring us together. Together, we seek understanding, offering hope and compassion to all. May this space hold our differences as blessings, and our common hopes as a foundation for unity. Let us open our hearts to the divine present among us in every breath, word, and action. As we celebrate the beauty of our world's many religions, may we be inspired to live with grace and generosity. The spirit of love and unity, we worship together as one.
To serve the neighbors we have from you. Knelt at the feet of his friends, silently washing their feet. Jesus, you act as a servant to them. Jesus, fill us with your love, show us how to serve the neighbors we have from you. Neighbors are rich and poor, varied in color and race. Neighbors are near and far away. Jesus, fill us with your love, show us how to serve the neighbors we have from you. These are the ones we should serve, these are the ones we should love. All of these neighbors to us and you. Jesus, fill us with your love, show us how to serve the neighbors we have from you. Loving puts us on our knees, showing our faith by our deeds, serving the neighbors we have from you. Jesus, fill us with your love, show us how to serve the neighbors we have from you. Kneeling at the feet of our friends, silently washing their feet. This is the way we should live with you. Jesus, fill us with your love, show us how to serve the neighbors we have from you.
All right, you ready? Come on up. Have a seat. How are you? Oh, look at this outfit, everybody. This is awesome. Right in tune with our pumpkins and everything else. You want to come see us? All right, good. Oh, good morning. Do we know this little person's name?
This is Abby.
Abby, it's so nice to meet you. My name is Wendy. And you know this guy, right? Yeah, it's Copper. We know Copper. Yeah. I was sharing with Meg this morning that our secretary at the Unitarian Universalist Church of Akron had an office beagle. So apparently beagles are religious liberals, and we just didn't know. So Miss Abby, are you excited for Halloween? Yeah, very good. I love your dress. Well, everybody, we're going to help Abby with the children's moment this morning. So access your inner child. Take a deep breath. Think back to when you were about that size, right? And we're talking a lot today about harmonies between different religions, right? And one of the big harmonies that we have with many of our neighboring religions and friends, thank you, Meg, is the harmony of social justice and helping our neighbors, helping our friends that we know. So when we're Abby's age, what's super important is playing with our friends and making sure everybody has fun and everybody gets to play, right? So I can tell with one glance at Abby that Abby is that kid that makes sure everybody gets to play and nobody gets left out. Look at that face. Oh my goodness, that's great. So, big people, we just ask you to remember that sometimes being a great neighbor and harmonizing with people who might worship differently than we do is as simple as being a good friend and making sure nobody gets left out. Right, Angel? I love this dog. Oh my goodness. And that's it, folks. So as you go forth this week, don't overcomplicate it. We're in for quite a week. So think about Abby and think about Copper and carry that in your heart this week. Thank you, Miss Abby. You are wonderful to come and help me out today. Thank you for being here. All right, everybody. Thank you.
All right. I'm going to ask you to take a moment, if you will, and consider work. What you do for work, if you're retired, what you did for work. I'm sure that you probably had good days and bad days. Everybody does something different. Some days your back would hurt, some days your feet would hurt. Maybe your eyes hurt from staring at your screen for too long. For some folks, work is very much the same. They often create their own hours, have virtual options, as well as some choosing in-office work. Just like most, if not many of you, it's not always a joy, but it pays the bills. And for some, it is a passion project that means they get to see the world and make money while doing it. I am, of course, talking about the oldest profession: humbugging, hooking, camming, call girls, hustlers, streetwalkers, doming. I could go on, but I will spare you any more weird euphemisms for sex work. Before I continue, I know some in this congregation have historically had a lot of strong feelings about sex being discussed from this position in this building. I am not trying to make anyone uncomfortable today, but this is an important facet of our society that is under threat in many ways and impacts many very vulnerable populations. I promise this is focused on social justice, on a social justice subject that impacts thousands, many of whom are physically limited or struggle with their mental health, and this is an accessible and safe form of work that is at risk, and they risk losing everything. By definition, sex work is the exchange of sexual services, performance, image, or products for compensation. Most importantly, sex work is consensual and between adults, not to be confused with human trafficking, which is without a doubt one of the most horrific contemporary slaveries that exists in our world. Sex work can be anything as minor as selling pictures of your feet on the internet, all the way up to full service work. And yes, people do sell pictures of their feet on the internet. There are countries that have safe and legal protected brothels, including Germany, Canada, New Zealand, Australia, and France. The list goes on extensively. America is not among them. With COVID-19, the prevalence of sex work blew up as many people who struggled to make ends meet while the world was shut down and helped to make OnlyFans a household name. Before that, many workers used Craigslist, Twitter, Instagram, Reddit, and built a clientele slowly and in a safe business that worked for them. In-person workers often face a very different risk group that many online do not face and have often been treated as less dead when murdered or harmed. Keeping in mind almost all of Gary Ridgway, the Green River Killer's 49 confirmed victims, were believed to be sex workers, and also remember that he is believed to have murdered more than 90 people. This makes one feel online is the way to go, right? Not working in person. Well, let's get to the real point of today's discussion. FOSTA SESTA. 2 bills that remapped the landscape of online sex work and a set of laws that have caused untold damage to sex workers and victims of human trafficking. FOSTA SESTA stands for Fight Online Sex Trafficking Act and Stop Enabling Sex Traffickers Act. The goal, as is clear, is to reduce online trafficking. Part of how they do that is by holding corporations liable for trafficking found on their sites. While the intention was good, this has resulted in pushing trafficking and trafficking victims further underground and making them harder to find, as well as criminalizing victims more than helping them escape a form of modern-day slavery and recover. Many trafficked victims walk away with a criminal record. Civil rights groups and sex workers have collectively spoken out against FOSTA SESTA because of the real harm it causes to everyday people. FOSTA SESTA has forced many online workers into dangerous and the precarious position of needing to do in-person work, which can put them at risk of being gouged by protection services or even having their lives at risk. It has damaged the ability to vet clients and adequately create safe environments for the exploration of consensual sex work. My friend, Circe Circus, suffers from severe agoraphobia as well as MS. Due to FOSTA SESTA, her income was devastated, bank accounts legally shut down, and funds taken away and made inaccessible to her permanently. She could no longer feed her daughter and ended up giving her 5-year-old to her mother while she contended with homelessness and the platforms she spent 12 years working to build a clientele on shut her down entirely. All of this done legally and in large part because of FOSTA SESTA. I shared that story with consent. I asked her first. If you are an online person and you want to know more about FOSTA SESTA, Elle Stanger at Stripper Writer on Instagram is a certified sex educator, sex worker, parent, and activist based out of Portland, Oregon. She does incredible education work around this issue as well as many more. And she's from the stripper capital of the world, which is Portland, Oregon. There are more strippers per capita than anywhere else in the world. The only 2 senators that voted against the 2018 set of bills called FOSTA SESTA were Rand Paul and Ron Wyden. Wyden having stated, "I continue to be deeply troubled that this bill's approach will make it harder to catch dangerous criminals, a fact that has proved out over time, especially through COVID." Now, quickly I want to touch on, before I step away, why sex work? It's about accessibility. It's about embracing human sexuality and needs. There is a reason it is considered the oldest profession in the world. It's in the Bible, for heaven's sake. It's being a performer and an artist. It's about having your basic human needs met. Before I leave, I want you to consider who you may know who feels they would need to hide this from you and why. Consider people who risk losing their livelihood because they do something they love, perhaps burlesque, or consider it might be how they keep their lights on. I thank you for listening to me. My name is Lilith de la Louve. I am a burlesque performer. My name is Bailey Alpine, and I have done cam work and professional dominatrix work, largely to keep the roof over my head. And my name is Charlotte Albee, and I am a sex worker.
Now is the time when we share our gifts to support this loving community. You can give electronically, via Tithely, by scanning the QR code that's right there. Giving to our website, www.chesterlanducc.org, and clicking on the donate button, or mailing a check to this beautiful building at 11984 Caves Road. And next is our doxology. Go Tyler.
Praise to the source of all we know, for peace and love that freely flow. Praise to the wisdom deep and wise, whose truth and justice
Today's ancient reading comes from Psalm 91, verses 9 through 16. Because you have made the Lord your refuge, the Most High your dwelling place, no evil shall befall you, nor scourge come near your tent. For he will command his angels concerning you, to guard you in all their ways. On their hands they will bear you up, so that you will not dash your foot against a stone. You will tread on the lion and the adder, the young lion and the serpent you will trample underfoot. Those who love me I will deliver. I will protect those who know my name. When they call to me, I will answer them. I will be with them in trouble. I will rescue them and honor them. With long life I will satisfy them and show them my salvation. And our modern sacred reading is Prayer by Howard Thurman. I confess my own inner confusion as I look out upon the world. There is food for all, many are hungry. There are clothes enough for all, many are in rags. There is room enough for all, many are crowded. There are none who want war, preparations for conflict abound. Let thy light burn in me, that I may, from this moment on, take effective steps within my own powers, to live up to the light, and courageously to pay for the kind of world I so deeply desire.
Good morning again, everyone. And thank you so much for having me here again today. It's lovely to experience the inside of the church. I got to speak at the beautiful outside setting, so it's a treat to have been able to do both. And this is amazing. Is it Charlie that did the? Wow. Okay, thank you very much. I'm really pleased to be speaking on World Religion Sunday. When I was in seminary, you got to pick a concentration, kind of like a minor when you're in college. And I actually had two, because I couldn't make up my mind. One was Unitarian Universalism, which was the path I was on at the time. And the other was interfaith study, so world religion, basically. So this is something that's very near and dear to my heart. And when I was exchanging emails with Meg, and she said, we need somebody for World Religion Sunday, I was like, oh, pick me, pick me. So I was really happy to be talking about this. When I was studying world religions, we were taught to be careful about comparing religions. If we said, oh, Buddhism is like Christianity in this way or that way, we ran the risk of underappreciating the uniqueness of the different religions. We were taught instead to think about how world religions harmonize. And I think that's a great word, because it makes me think of how religions coexist without unintentionally privileging one over the other, right? I loved that idea of searching for the harmonies between and among world religions. So I'm going to recommend, before I forget, a really cool website for you to explore if you're interested. It's run by a professor at Harvard named Dr. Diana Eck, and it's called the Pluralism Project. The website is pluralism.org. Pretty easy. Dr. Eck studies how the United States religious landscape has changed and evolved and continues to evolve in our collective history. Her word to describe this sustained coexistence of different religions is pluralism, hence the Pluralism Project. If you're curious and want to learn more about any of the religions we're about to name here, please do check it out. All the religions I'm about to rattle off that they study, you can click on it and learn all kinds of really cool things about that religion. They study Afro-Caribbean faith traditions, the Baha'i faith, Buddhism, Christianity, Confucianism, Taoism, Hinduism, humanism, which I thought was an interesting addition. I have many humanist friends, some of whom would be shocked and not happy to be on that list. Others who would think that was really cool that they were on that list of religions. Islam, Jainism, Judaism, Native American traditions, paganism, Shinto, Sikhism, and Unitarian Universalism. They're again very pleased to see UUism separate. A lot of people think Unitarian Universalism is sort of extreme liberal Christian light. It's not really true. That's where UU roots come from, but it's definitely a separate religion. So I was pleased that they knew that at the Pluralism Project. And last but not least, let me see if I can say it, Zoroastrianism, which we studied in school, and it's really cool. It comes from Persia, and they don't have sacred scriptures, they have sacred songs. How cool is that, Tyler, right? That's where they make all their ethical decisions between good and evil and whatnot, is they sing their songs and work through it. I thought that was really neat. The interfaith studies professor at my seminary contributed his research on interfaith space sharing with Dr. Eck's ongoing studies, and that's how I learned about the Pluralism Project. Interfaith space sharing is exactly what it sounds like. My Quaker meeting meets in a big Sunday school room in the basement of an Episcopalian church. My first Quaker meeting met in the basement of a Presbyterian church. That's what space sharing is, when one religious community makes room for another. Quakers seek out these spaces because it's part of our commitment to simplicity and social justice. Because we're so small, we don't have the capacity to help one another care for a building and to do social justice work. So all of my meetings opted to space share. But in parts of California, New England, Philadelphia, of course, there's plenty of Quakers, and they have meeting houses like you think of when you think of Quakers. Scores of Unitarian Universalist churches also house Buddhist groups. Most of them, particularly around Chicago, New York, California, are Zen Buddhists, but not all of them. Not only do Buddhists and Unitarian Universalists share space, they often share people. Many UUs are practicing Buddhists, and many Buddhists are UUs, but not all. This has been true for decades. The benediction I chose for us today, that I'll read later this morning, was written by the Reverend Wayne Arneson. He was the Unitarian Universalist minister at the West Shore Church over in Rocky River for many years. He was also a nationally known UU Buddhist. The question my professor was interested in specifically was, what were the effects after 9/11 on Islamic and Christian congregations who space shared? When some Islamic people arrived in the United States and didn't yet have enough folks to build a mosque or to carry a mosque, they space shared. His work focused on these groups that settled in the Chicago area, and he found that, perhaps not surprisingly, the groups became neighborly, often inviting each other to holiday meals and services and so forth. These relationships continued even after the groups moved into their own houses of worship, post 9/11, or at other times when being Muslim was to be at risk. Their former neighbors reopened their spaces, sometimes moving their own worship services so that the Muslims could worship in peace and safety. To be clear, the United States is not by any means the only place multiple world religions coexist, and it is most certainly not a modern phenomenon. Karen Armstrong's A History of God explores the history of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, and points out ways in which they are harmonious. And she wrote this about Spain and Judaism in the Middle Ages. The Muslims of Spain had given Jews the best home they had ever had in the diaspora. So the annihilation of Spanish Jewry was mourned by Jews throughout the world as the greatest disaster to have befallen their people since the destruction of the temple in CE 70. The experience of exile entered more deeply into Jewish religious consciousness than ever before. It led to a new form of Kabbalah and the evolution of a new conception of God. It is so interesting to me that in all our religious histories, all of them, at one time or another, we were all wanderers. I was so excited to see in this week's lectionary reading that Psalm 91, which we heard part of beautifully this morning, thank you, was included. Of course, being a psalm and part of the Hebrew Bible, this was written by Jewish writers for Jewish hearers. But for me, it harmonizes with all religious peoples at one time or another as they seek safety and protection in order to perform their rituals and practice their beliefs. I would invite you to listen to this again. If you're comfortable, please close your eyes as I read our reading again this morning. Try to imagine what the Psalm's first hearers might have felt as they first heard it. Because you have made the Lord your refuge, the Most High your dwelling place, no evil shall befall you, no scourge come near your tent. For he will command his angels concerning you to guard you in all your ways. On their hands they will bear you up, so that you will not dash your foot against a stone. You will tread on the lion and the adder, the young lion and the serpent you will trample underfoot. Those who love me I will deliver. I will protect those who know my name. When they call to me, I will answer them. I will be with them in trouble. I will rescue them and honor them. With long life, I will satisfy them and show them my salvation. Thank you. For so much of our histories, and for so many in the present, knowing that we are safe to practice our religion is uppermost. It was true in ancient times, and it is true now. One of the other ways that UCC folk and UU and Quaker folk find compelling is the way many faith traditions harmonize around social justice work. The Quran, sacred scripture of Islam, talks about Allah creating the heavens and the scales of balance at the same time. It's part of creation. This is interpreted by many Muslims to mean that Allah created justice. Often, Islamic justice revolves around economic equality. It's not enough to give to the poor. If one is a devout Muslim, one seeks to ensure that someone is given enough to put them on equal footing with others. We heard a little bit about that in our social justice moment. I read about an author once who was an American woman, and she'd married a Muslim man from Saudi Arabia or Egypt, I can't remember which. And this was true. This was not part of her fictional novel. She told this story before she started talking about her book. He drove her crazy because he always had people over sharing food and clothes and furniture and whatever with people sometimes he had only met that day, but people who needed it. She left him when he gave away their car. He gave it to someone who needed it, and she could not fathom how he could do that and leave them without a car. She felt that he prioritized other people over their family. It just didn't work. Too much cultural difference there. But when I started learning about Islamic ideas of justice and helping others to be on the same plane, I thought about that guy. This radical sharing that the American wife felt was extreme was really not all that outrageous in her husband's Islamic belief system. And it seems to me that Jesus would have thought this Muslim husband was doing a great thing and really living, as Howard Thurman said in our prayer earlier, courageously. You probably remember that Howard Thurman was a leading black minister who was heavily involved in the civil rights movement. He was also a brilliant theologian who wrote at great lengths to tie together the mysticism of Christianity with the reality of what was needed to address the injustice he saw everywhere around him. And we heard that at the conclusion of his prayer. He prayed, "Let thy light burn in me, that I may, from this moment on, take effective steps within my own powers to live up to the light and courageously to pay for the kind of world I so deeply desire." Any minister that can work in effective steps into a prayer is okay by me. When Howard Thurman talks about the light, he's referring to the love that Jesus had for the world and the responsibilities that come with that. If we're following in Jesus' footsteps, we can't help but see that injustice in the world, much like Howard Thurman did. Thurman says, and this is the perfect blend of his activism and his mysticism, that I may from this moment on take effective steps within my own powers to live up to the light. So tying those two things together. And I love the way it ends, and courageously to pay for the kind of world I so deeply desire. It almost echoes, be the change you wish to see in the world, which I am sorry to be the one to tell you Mahatma Gandhi never said. So if you have a mug at work that says that and it says Gandhi on it, bless your heart, it's a collector's item because he never really said it. What Gandhi, who of course was raised as a Hindu, wrote in an article in 1913 was, if we could change ourselves, the tendencies in the world would also change. So the idea is the same, right? You change here, and that changes the world around you. So not as snappy as be the change you wish to see in the world, but the idea is the same. And Gandhi's Hinduism harmonizes with the Christianity within which Thurman prayed for that deep courage we need when we step forward to try and make the world what our faith tradition tells us it should be. Judaism has a concept known as tikkun olam. It's unique because it's predicated on the idea that the world started out broken, which is really interesting to me. It doesn't cast blame and say, oh, the world was perfect, and then these bad things happened because humans didn't do it right. It's like, you know what? It was a mess to start with. But tikkun olam means to repair the world, and it's a Jewish thread of social justice, kind of. Like the Muslim author's husband who sought to better balance wealth and poverty, and Gandhi's idea of changing himself to change the world, and Thurman's prayer for courage, tikkun olam is responsibility given by God to Jews to be constantly engaged in repairing the world. My son attended daycare and after-school care at the Shaw Jewish Community Center down in Akron, where we live, and the concept of tikkun olam, or repairing the world, is taught to children at a very young age, like Abby's age. They start to have those conversations. It's very inspiring to see really young kids coming up with some pretty profound ideas about how that might look in their world. It's not like they don't notice, right? Friends, we are today on the brink of what may be remembered as the most divisive election in our lifetimes. It's so easy right now to see how we are different. It's a very scary time. If it helps, ask yourself, what would Howard Thurman do? Well, he'd act, that's for certain. He'd be helping to turn out the vote, but he'd also be connecting with the light. On this World Religion Sunday, I encourage you to connect with the light. Searching for the harmonies between religions can be an uplifting and healing spiritual practice in these divisive times. Thank you. I would like to share this reading with you. It's from the Navajo tradition, and it really encompassed for me the beautiful experience we had of worship 2 Sundays ago when I was here, and also the beauty that surrounds us this morning. So please join me in a spirit of meditation or prayer. This is from the Navajo tradition. Beauty is before me, and beauty behind me. Above me and below me hovers the beautiful. I am surrounded by it. I am immersed in it. In my youth, I am aware of it. And in old age, I shall walk quietly the beautiful trail. In beauty, it is begun. In beauty, it is ended.
We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome someday. We'll go are not afraid. We are not afraid. We are not afraid today. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we are not afraid someday.
Take courage, friends. The way is often hard, the path is never clear, and the stakes are very high. Take courage, for deep down there is another truth. You are not alone. Blessed be, and go in peace.